Morning and welcome to this morning's episode of the Amateur in the Morning. I am your host, the Forex Amateur. Today is the 6th of January. It's a beautiful Wednesday, nice cool Wednesday morning out here in Durban, South Africa. Hope everybody had a blessed trading day yesterday. And as you know, on these episodes, I like to break down my view of the charts for the day on the dollar index, Nasdaq equity, and the synthetic indices market. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight down into it. Before I do that, I just want to throw in my little disclaimer in there. Remember, I'm not qualified to offer financial investment or trading advice. Everything I speak about on these episodes is purely my own opinion. I do not recommend any specific trade or action. So if you do take any trades on your side, remember, do it with cash that you are willing to risk and ensure that you have done your research and your analysis. So let's get straight into it. We're going to talk about the dollar index, looking at the daily chart on the dollar index. I did speak about yesterday, perhaps getting some bullishness off of this line that I actually drew in here. And as you can see in the wick right here, we did get some bullishness. Now, yesterday's candle actually was very bearish, but we did also get some bullishness off of that line. So let's just drop down to the 4-hour chart and let's just have a look at that. So you can see on the 4-hour chart here, we had this breakthrough and then price immediately gave us like 2 hours of bullishness. 2 4-hour candles of bullishness off of this level. So still looking at it at the moment, perhaps we might be getting a small pullback happening soon. Looking just at what's happening in here, we're most likely going to have some sort of a pullback. Remember, I did highlight this pink zone that we have in here as a level that I would expect price to come back to and give us some sort of a correction in here and then sort of trade back to the downside. So overall, I'm not going to say that whether this is going to happen today or tomorrow, because then that would require me to go down to the lower time frames, some sort of structure into there, and then I'll expect price to sort of go back down to the downside, right? So overall, we're looking at a retracement in here, perhaps during the course of today or tomorrow, depending on what you're seeing on the lower time frame. So in this instance here, obviously you need to identify a significant level in here on the daily time frame, and then perhaps drop down to the lower time frames like your 1 hour or 4 hour and look for your confirmations in that specific level. Now, looking at the 1 hour chart in here, as you can see, we've got the strong bearish push to the downside, bullish candle currently, and it hasn't really closed. This is currently a very fresh candle, right? So we're most likely going to expect it to come perhaps to the structure here that's been broken, and then look at it continuing back to the downside from around there, right? So if you're looking to take a bit of a risky entry, perhaps looking for something around this area in here might be a good opportunity, right? So overall for today, I'm looking at a young pullback on this specific instrument, and looking at price continuing to the downside. Overall, we have not changed our bearish bias on this market. I'm still fully expecting it to continue down. As you can see, on every time frame, we're making lower lows, lower highs, right? So overall, this market is still super bearish at the moment. And as I said, on the monthly time frame, I'm expecting it to come down to this low right in here on the monthly, perhaps break through it. That's not really significant. It's all about projecting a target that is achievable rather than the full-on move itself, because nobody makes money from being right. You make money from actually making money, catching pips, if that makes any sense. Let's just move on to the Nasdaq equities and let's talk about it really quickly. So yesterday I did speak about the Nasdaq equity continuing to the downside. I want you guys to take note of these things and make sure that you are actioning in terms of this, your analysis on your own charts. And if you see tradable opportunities, you do what you need to do in that instance. Like I said, I'm not really doing these episodes to give you trading advice. I'm purely doing it to give you educational content, and secondly, to help you identify daily bias, And as you can see, in terms of direction, that is one of the first biggest issues that people have in terms of identifying the direction in which price is going to go. Now, looking at the daily chart, I did speak about it yesterday that we'll most likely see NASDAQ continue to the downside, right? we'll most likely see it continue to the downside. And what made me say that, I did drop down to the 4-hour chart, and we did speak about this bearish momentum that stepped into here, right? Now, as you can see, what's actually happened here is we had a simple break and retest of structure in here. So this structure in terms of consolidation broken to the downside, and price sort of pulled back. This is most likely like a 62% fib retracement. So this would have been a really good area to be looking, as I did say, drag a fib from here to here and look for something in this area here. I think I did mention it on yesterday's episode. Look for a significant area in here where you can take a trade, So looking for today, I would actually be expecting Nasdaq to continue to the downside. Next projected target would be at this area in here. And once we've dealt with that area, we're most likely perhaps going to come down, give us a double bottom in this area and go up, or come down, break through this area and go up, something to that effect, or just immediately come down and go up, something like that, because remember, overall on the higher time frame, we are still bullish on this market. This is simply just a small correction before the market continues in its predisposed direction, right? Because if you look at it on the weekly, you can see that this market is still full on bullish, right? If you look at it on the monthly time frame, still full on bullish as well. So this is simply just a pullback, right? And what we can do is we can also look for like lower levels in here. And if the market continues to break to the downside, we can obviously take opportunities as those arise. So let's just have a look at the 1-hour chart and see if we've got any significant areas where, if you failed to get in on the trade, you can most likely look at taking trades at those areas in there, right? So looking at this specific area right here, we can see this is an area of supply that has just come in after this area of supply in here, right? So significant areas that I would be looking at is, if the market is able to come back to this area of supply right in here, it might be still an area that you can be able to take some short-term sales, not anything that you'd be able to hold for the long term. Overall, looking at this area in here, we've got this push to the upside and that break to the downside. So that is also an area right in there. So if I take this significant push to the upside in there, perhaps let's mark up something like that. Let's push this up to here, right? That is a really significant level that you can most likely look at. Doing something off of this level in here, right? You can see price reacted from this level previously. We've got this inside candle in here as well. We've got all of this imbalance inside of this candle in here. So if price is able to pull back into these areas, we've got the structure that has been broken as well, the last structure to be broken. After this structure gets broken as well. But this structure was the last structure to sort of get broken significantly. So this might also be a good level to be looking at for re-entry opportunities, right? So I'm just going to leave that on there, and let's just move on to the next chart. I want you guys to take note as well, and I keep mentioning this every single day. I want you guys to take notice of the fact that the analysis with NASDAQ and the dollar index correlates with each other almost on a daily basis. If you notice that generally, if I'm seeing bullishness on the dollar, I'm seeing bearishness on the equity NASDAQ, right? If I'm seeing bearishness on if I'm seeing bullishness on NASDAQ, NASDAQ. If I'm seeing bullishness on NASDAQ, I'm seeing bearishness on the dollar. Right, so just take note of that, and I want to keep pointing that out because it's something that I noticed. The more time I spend on these charts, because I haven't consistently spent daily, a daily amount of time on those specific charts for quite a significant period of time, right? So as I continue to analyze them on a daily basis for these episodes and this content for YouTube, I'm also constantly taking notes of the fact that this correlation seems to work very, very powerful, very powerfully, if that is it. Actually, yeah, I think that's a word. So let's move on and let's talk about the volatility 25-1S. Before we go too far, I just want to point out something that we spoke about yesterday. I was slightly a bit off about this, right? But overall, I was right about in terms of a sell in and around this area here. So we spoke about this yesterday. As you can see, that actually played out beautifully, right? My projected target yesterday was this level in here, which we have yet to hit, which we will hit definitely today, right? But overall, that was a really, really good projection that we did on that. So looking at that, we're still super bearish on this market, right? Reason for that is because we've broken structure, We've broken this structure. We've broken this structure in here. If we drop down to the 1 hour time frame, we've broken structure, broken structure. So a lot of significant structure breaks in this significant in this push to the downside, right? So overall, I'm still bearish on this market. We might look at this market perhaps reaching somewhere into say around this area in here, right? Look at this market reaching somewhere into that area in there, and giving us some sort of a significant play off of that area. Let's just put it on because that was the last area of demand, right? So looking at a play down to around this area in here, we most likely will get a pullback in between it, right? And that's just purely dependent on the amount of momentum sitting in this move, right? Because as you might have noticed by now, that on the volatility or on anything for that matter, volume is a bit low at the moment, right? So we're not looking at taking those longer term trades. We're looking at basically getting in and getting out as as price allows us to. So looking at this in this instance here, we've got a pretty significant bearish push to the downside directly off this level in here, right? So that's looking pretty good at the moment, and we're most likely looking to take it down into this area if price does allow us to do so. So overall, still bearish on dollar. Overall, still bearish on the volatility 25-1S. Let's move on to the volatility 100, which we spoke about yesterday, getting back down into here, giving us maybe a tap into here and closing back inside, right? So we did get a really strong rejection yesterday, but it hasn't really done what I wanted to do. As you can see, if you look at this on the 1 hour chart, this is a pretty corrective move to the upside that we see in here, right? So this is not an impulse push to the upside and then a corrective pull back to that level in there so that we can continue taking those buys out. So I'm not convinced by this impulse that we've seen. Most likely you can see this is a really strong wick that we see in here as well. So in these instances, I generally see price sort of pull back to fill that wick before it does anything, right? So for now, I'll be looking at the last significant level the price was able to push off of, and this is it, right? So that is the level that I'll be watching right now. And if I get selling opportunities from here, I'll probably take sales back to the downside again until we are convinced by the bullish push break to the upside, right? So still looking at this area right in here. Let's just make this one a bit smaller. Right, so overall, still looking at that, we might see the bullishness continue for today, right? Because we formed some sort of a double bottom in here. So we might see the bullishness continue for today. And I'll be watching in the zone perhaps for rejection, push back to the downside. And this is more likely a good area for me to be looking for buys, right? Remember, we marked this zone up yesterday based on the structure break, based on this inside candle presence that we can see right in here before this push to the upside. And there's other things that I've obviously been looking at. I did speak about this double bottom significance break below in here, and when it breaks back inside, we'll be looking for breaks of structures and continue back to the bullish side. So that's about it from my side. Hopefully I've covered everything. Remember, if you have any suggestions, anything, any requests, any queries, be sure to drop it in the comments on the video, and we'll be sure to have a look at those. And if there's any suggestions, ensure that you drop those as well. I think I didn't mention it, but be sure to drop those as well, because I'm really interested to see what your suggestions are, to see if there's anything that we could do to probably make these videos a bit better. Maybe look at in a bit more detail, maybe explain my thought process in a bit more detail, obviously not disclosing too much information. Whatever it is, drop it down in the comments, and we'll be sure to get back to those. So until next time, it's been a pleasure as always to share with you guys. Wishing you a blessed and a profitable trading day.